What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Sloppy Saturdays. And today I have a video that I've been waiting to get out for you guys. We are talking about the differences between David Bailey and Avrell Reese. Why we are talking about this, obviously, it has come up in the last couple of days. The Jets have been deciding who they want to take at the number 2 overall pick, David Bailey or Avrell Reese. Two guys that could definitely rush the passer. Right now, the live odds are David Bailey at minus 140 to get drafted by the Jets, Avrell Reese at plus 100. If I'm a Jets fan, definitely not looking into that. One report from a random reporter, and that could switch the odds. It's too close, really, right now to tell. Now, I want to talk about these two players because Avrell Reese, to a lot of people, is labeled as an edge rusher. I really believe he's more of an off-ball linebacker. And I think both of these players are very different. I think one of these guys, you're really looking at a high floor, and they got to absolutely crush his position. And then another guy we're looking at where you're really going to focus on his development plan and what he can be in the NFL. So two completely different ways to go about this pick. The one thing I do have to say with the New York Jets picking in the top three, I think they're definitely narrowing it down to the two best players at the pick. This is going to be more about how different these players are than who I think they should take, really, because I don't really have a much strong opinion either side. Like I said, I do think one player has a little more upside, but it's going to take a little more development. And then I think David Bailey on the other end is a guy that's really a plug-and-play edge rush starter. Like I said, I think the Jets are narrowing down to the two best players. When you're looking at players in the top three, you're really looking at either you want a quarterback because your team doesn't have one, most likely in the top three, or you're looking at a guy to get after the quarterback. So I do think the Jets are narrowing it down to the right two people. And then also in the top three, sometimes there are outliers when you look at a receiver, a running back. Those are different, but it should really be edge rusher, quarterback in the top three for some of these developing teams. I really like the situation the Jets are in. The Jets are a team with a lot of picks. So you're looking at 4 in the top 45, I believe. So they have a chance really to draft 4 really good players and to elevate this rebuild a little bit. And then next year, you're looking at 3 first-round picks. You can make the argument that Jets could really take a swing on some of these picks. Now, you don't want to take a massive swing within the top three. I mean, if you're taking a player in the top three, you want this player to be a great NFL player for sure. But enough dancing around all this. Let's really get into both these players and what I think. Avrell Reese, I've said it time and time again, I believe he is perfect for what the modern NFL is. I believe right now, in simple terms, when you look at front seven in the NFL and just NFL defenses in general, what an NFL defense wants to do right now is really they want to disguise pass rush. They want to have a pass rush where they have multiple players in the front seven where you could not know whether they are rushing the passer or dropping back in coverage. This is where Avrell Reese fits in absolutely perfect, in my opinion. When we look at the Jets and the defense they're going to run this season under a defensive coordinator, it's going to be a 3-4 style defense. And when you look at Avrell Reese, he could play all 7 positions in that 3-4 style defense. But the thing with Avrell Reese is you don't want to inform him with too much information way too quick. The problem with Avrell Reese going to the Jets, in my opinion, is he's a guy that can play all over. He's a guy that primarily, in my opinion, is an off-ball linebacker, but he has the ability to set the edge and walk up to the edge. What I would do to Avrell Reese, I believe he should be playing the first 2 downs as a primarily off-ball linebacker. He should be getting most of his reps as an off-ball linebacker. And then on later crucial downs, 3rd, 4th down, have him walk up to the edge, sometimes set the edge, and have the ability to make an offense not know whether he's rushing the passer or he's dropping back in coverage. But he really has to develop primarily as an off-ball linebacker because when you look at a lot of these players that we get enamored with their athletic ability, I said it with Travis Hunter last year. I know it's a completely different player. Or what are you looking at? Isaiah Simmons, that's very similar to an Avrell Reese that got drafted to the Cardinals. You get enamored with their athletic ability and you throw way too much information with them quick and you want them to be the savior of your team. This cannot happen. It is very hard for a player to translate from college to the NFL alone. Now you want them to have work separated into a bunch of different skill sets. It cannot happen. You really have to develop somebody primarily at one position and then maybe ease them into something else. That's why I believe Avrell Reese should primarily be developed as an off-ball linebacker. And then again, on some crucial downs, you disguise him as an edge rusher, and sometimes he drops back in coverage, sometimes he rushes the passer. That's how he should be developed. My biggest issue with Avrell Reese going to the Jets that I believe is really just a Jets concern in the top three. We could dance around it or we could be honest. Aaron Glenn is probably not going to be the coach of the New York Jets next year. So when you look at a player like Avrell Reese, how delicate he is when you're looking at how you want to develop a player, you're going to have this program set in place for him this year, and then most likely there's going to be a new coach next year that wants to develop him a different way. I believe that could be really, really detrimental to his development. That's something I don't like about the New York Jets. And like I said, I feel like a Swiss Army knife in a defense is really only as effective as the people around him. When you look at a lot of Swiss Army knives in the NFL, I know they play different positions. Whether you look at a Nick Emanuori or you look at a Derwin James, the reason why these guys are so effective and how they can move all over the place and how they can be disguising defenses, because you also have other people around him that an offense has to worry about. When you look at Avril Reese and you want him to be the savior and you want him to be disguised as a pass rusher and you want him to drop back in coverage, he's not going to be as effective if an offense is singling in on this one player. So I think it's very important with the people around him. I kind of do like the Mario Davis signing for the New York Jets if they were going the Avril Reese route. I believe this is a guy that could definitely mentor Avril Reese. And I kind of thought while they were signing him, I thought Avril Reese was going to be the pick. Like, you get this veteran linebacker that can mentor him. But my biggest issue with Avril Reese, I think he is perfect for the NFL in the sense of, like, again, disguising coverages. You want guys that you don't know whether they're dropping back or they're rushing the passer. But if you throw way too much at him too quick and you want him to be the savior of your team, it is not going to work out. The development plan has to be delicate. And like I said, a lot of people get very enamored with this athletic ability and the ceiling of a lot of these defensive and even offensive players, how you can move them around. But the development plan has to be right. You have to have the right people around him in place, and you have to use him at the right points. Like I said, another thing that is very, very good for Avril Reese, in my opinion, is the defense that he played in. Not only did he not have empty production, like his defense was the best defense in college football, but you got to look at the person using him in Matt Patricia, a guy that's a long-term NFL coach, whether it's a coordinator or a head coach. He was used in an NFL-style defense. So you could look at what Matt Patricia did with him, even call up Matt Patricia and translate a lot of those plays into your offense. That's what I really like about Avril Reese. And again, the risk of him is what it is, but he was playing in an NFL-style defense, and some of the stuff that he did at Ohio State could definitely translate into the NFL. Now I want to get into David Bailey. David Bailey, I believe, is the polar opposite of an Avril Reese. I believe for the New York Jets, a team that, again, has a lot of questions, obviously a team in the New York Jets that haven't been great at developing players. David Bailey is that guy that's a plug-and-play starter day one, and there isn't much you have to do in his development plan to make him develop. He's going to be an above-average starter, I believe, within the first 2 years. I believe this is a guy, when you're looking at edge rushers, there is absolutely no comparison between Avril Reese and David Bailey. David Bailey is the better edge rusher. When we look at him last year, he had 14.5 sacks. This is a guy that only plays really on the edge or inside. I believe inside he's a little underrated as well. When you plug and play David Bailey inside, he is a run stopper. But this is a guy that primarily, like I said, he only plays on the defensive line, and he absolutely crushed his position in 4 years. I believe the transfer of him going to Stanford and Texas Tech was phenomenal for him. Not only did David Bailey get a payday doing that, but I believe it further helped his development. He went on a defense that spent a shit ton of money, pardon my French, but he played alongside Jacob Rodriguez, and he was on one of the top defenses. This is what I really love about these two players, and the issue I have with some players, not only coming into the draft, but players in the NFL. Like, sometimes you look at a player and they are great defensive players, but it doesn't translate to their total defense. We were looking at two guys that were great defensive players on arguably the two best defenses in college football. So I really like that. David Bailey, like I said, there's absolutely no risk with him in the sense of like a developmental plan. The risk I do have with David Bailey is I do believe he's small for the edge rush position, and obviously he's not as fast as an Avril Reese. When you look at Avril Reese, he can play sideline to sideline. Avril Reese is a guy as an off-ball linebacker that could cover elite tight ends. He could chase down running backs on screens. David Bailey obviously isn't as fast as him, but I believe when you look at it as an edge rusher, how he crushed his position in his 4 years, I think he is, with his technique, the best edge rusher in the draft by far, and I believe he has a very high floor. So it really comes down to the New York Jets, like, what would you rather have? Would you rather take a little more of a swing? Avril Reese is a guy that I believe in the modern NFL translates perfectly. Like I said, NFL is all about disguise and pass rush. Whether you are going to rush a passer or you're going to drop back in coverage, Avril Reese can do both. But like I said, the developmental plan a team has on him could really determine how good he is in the NFL if he hits his ceiling. David Bailey is that plug-and-play edge rush starter that I believe the Jets really have no risk in drafting. Now you want to know if I was a New York Jets, who would I take? I'm kind of still leaning Avrell Reese a little bit because, again, like I said, I believe the upside is just a little more than David Bailey. Obviously, when you look at the physical standpoint, but really it's just like you get an off-ball linebacker with some edge rush upside. So I think that's what really separates them. David Bailey, again, I think he's a really good edge rusher. I think he's the best edge rusher in the class, and I think his ability really translates to that Texas Tech defense. The size is a little bit concerning for me, especially with how physical the NFL is, but I do think he's going to translate well because I do think his technique is great. I think his quickness off the line is great. And again, I do think his ability inside, he could really stop runs as well. Jets fans, drop down below who would you like the Jets to take here? I really think the Jets cannot go wrong. I think they have it narrowed down to the two best players. It really just comes down to like, hey, do you want to take a little bit of a swing at this pick, or do you want the guaranteed like plug and play starter day one that you're going to know how to use right away? That's the difference in this pick. These players are drastically different. Like I said, they both really aren't edge rushers. I would classify Avrell Reese more as an off-ball linebacker. David Bailey definitely more of like that edge rusher, interior type of guy on the defensive line. That wraps up the episode of Sloppy Saturdays. Like I said, let me know who you want the Jets to take, and we are out.